Well, yes, I am bipolar. I don't know if any of you recognize this picture here, but I think I remember it about 42 years ago, maybe. It was I was probably 9 or 10, and it's labeled "The Blue Planet," and I think it was Apollo 17, December 7th, 1972. But it sort of changed my life because I remember seeing it in National Geographic several months after it was taken. And looking at the bottom of this picture, it showed Antarctica. And at the time, I had no idea that I would ever be setting foot in Antarctica, but I did. And so it really was a precursor for what my career was going to do. So I ended up going to Antarctica and doing the first ski and snowboard descent of the mountain. And at the time, I just got a couple friends together, and it had never been done before. I then went on to go climb other mountains around the world called Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America. It was about 22,841 feet. I also climbed Denali. Denali is our highest peak in Alaska or North America. I've done that several times as well. I've gone on to do Elbrus in Russia. I also climbed a mountain in the Himalayas. I've led 17 Himalayan expeditions. This is Ama Dablam. I also did the first ski and snowboard descent of an 8,000 meter peak. This peak is 26,900 feet, and it sits in Tibet. And no one had ever done this before, and I wasn't very bright about it. I actually went and did it without oxygen. Most of the 8,000 meter peaks, you need oxygen, so I went without oxygen and without Sherpa help. Sherpas are the indigenous tribes that help you set up camps and stuff like that. But I was successful, but it wasn't a very fun trip. I ended up making a turn and spitting up some blood and then making another turn, so it wasn't a very fond memory, and I would do it differently. I also am a big stand-up paddleboarder. I don't know if anybody is a stand-up paddleboarder. I paddle all over the world. I paddled as far north as you can on the planet, up in Spitsbergen and all the way down in Antarctica. And my mom took this photo. So she's in the audience today, and she sort of set the groundwork for me too, and I'm very honored to call her my mother because she really gave me the inspiration, the compassion, and also the mindfulness of the human being that I am today. So thank you, Mom. I also do a lot of stand-up paddling in the Brazilian Amazon, and I am a dreamer. I dream up stuff. This coming May, I'm hoping to raise the money to be able to start at the very beginning of the Amazon River, which is I'm calling it the Source to Sea expedition, where I start in Mount Minasi. It's in Peru, and I'll climb that mountain. It's an 18,000-foot mountain. I'll descend it. I'll mountain bike 350 kilometers to Porto Maldonado and meet my support boat, and then I'll stand-up paddle 2,500 miles to the mouth of the Atlantic. And I want to talk about, it'll be a film project. I'll talk about the deforestation, the hydroelectric dams that is going on, and I'll bring a film crew along and visit with indigenous tribes. So this is one of my goals, and hopefully I can get that done. But I'm a skier. I ski probably close to 170 or 180 days a year. I just got back from Sun Valley. I ski all over the world, including Antarctica. More Antarctic skiing, and I own a company, and we take skiers to Antarctica, Svalbard, Greenland, Iceland, Morocco. We're skiing in Morocco, believe it or not. Kamchatka in Siberia. Also, Kashmir, India, we take clients skiing. And I also do Chilean volcanoes, Alaska, Canada, and other places around the world. But I'm more known for my polar exploits. And this is a picture of me at the South Pole. They always, the famous South Pole picture. And I've done 15 trips to the South Pole. And the first couple were just sort of for myself and try to beat my chest, and then they always have to have meaning, so I end up trying to raise money for charity. I won't take anybody unless they will raise money for a charity of their choice. I also do a lot of North Pole trips. I've done 15 trips to the North Pole. It's a very different environment from the South Pole. The South Pole is all land. It's land surrounded by water. The North Pole is all sea ice surrounded by land, so two very different environments. I also invented the ice bike, which was I I did a solo expedition in Antarctica for 3 weeks in 2003. And now the bike is in the Smithsonian, as well as Time magazine said it was one of the top 30 inventions of 2004. So it's funny how you sort of plant a seed and watch it grow. I also do a lot of education. Tyler talked about my education program. I have a 501(c) nonprofit where I go to schools and I talk about this amazing planet in which we live. And I'm in this a school in, I think, Pittsburgh, with an anaconda around my neck because I'm going to the Amazon and talking about that. And then here's a picture of me in the Antarctic. And this Adelie penguin just happened to pop up on cue when I'm talking to 1,000 kids in a large group room. And it's a fantastic way to learn about mostly the wildlife and about the environment in which we live. So it was just a great experience. And sort of the hair in the back of my neck goes up when I have these experiences and the kids are screaming on the other end and they can interact with me live. And here's how I do it. I pioneered the satellite communication with a BGAN satellite communicator. And in 2005, I put together basically an international climate change expedition. And I just didn't want to go and beat my chest and get to the South Pole or get to the North Pole. What I wanted to do is ask the scientists, how can I help you? What can I do to help you out? And so they handed me these 50-pound boxes, which was a beacon, which was basically a weather station that they throw out of planes. And I know you guys don't know me, but I weigh every gram that I take in my sled. I cut my toothbrush in half. I cut my labels out of clothing. I only take the exact same things I need. Same underwear for 50 days. So I couldn't take any of these beacons that these scientists wanted me to take. But what I did is I redesigned the beacon. And now they weigh about 6.5 pounds. And they're actually more accurate than the ones that the scientists were making. They're all made with carbon fiber. They do temperature, barometric pressure, and location where that ice is moving. And this is really critical data that the scientists need to know about the Arctic Ocean and where the ice is moving. And I'm on the left. You can see our jackets are very soggy. It's a very humid environment. A Dutch guy's in the middle, and then a Norwegian guy is on the right side. But we also, after 14 hours of skiing every day, it was important for me to get outside the tent and do more science work. We did snow depth measurements, we did ice depth measurements, and it was important for us. It was the last thing I really wanted to do, but it was important for us to get the right information. And this is what the Arctic Ocean looks like. It's constantly moving, it's in flux, it's breaking up, pressure ridges forming, open water. Here's another picture of the ice. It's the salt crystals are forming at the top. Within about an hour, it actually freezes because it's minus 40 to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius. It doesn't matter, minus 40 converges. And then within several hours, you're able to walk on it with your skis. And so every hour and a half, I stop, eat, drink, get a little nutrition and some fluids. But what I didn't expect is the 19 different polar bear encounters that I had along the way. And polar bears are really an interesting mammal. It's the only mammal that actually hunts man. And the males will actually do a walking slumber. They'll sleepwalk for about 2 months. They'll lower their metabolism. The females will actually dig a cave, and they'll give birth to 2 to 3 cubs about every 2 or 3 years. And they're quite cute in this picture. These are only 2 months old, but certainly they weren't very cute when you were on the ice. This is what they eat. It's called a bearded seal, and they have to make an air hole about every 22 minutes. They can only stay under, and the polar bears will sort of stay around the air holes and just sort of, I think, smack them on top of the head, or they're learning how to dive and go after them because that's what they eat. But this is what the Arctic Ocean looks like around where Canada is. I've done an expedition there, and it would take me probably 2 or 3 weeks to go 15 miles. Because most of the multi-year ice, and when I say multi-year ice, I'm talking about 7 to 14 years old, has been pushed down to Canada and the Baffin Straits. It's actually gotten easier for me to get to the North Pole. The ice has been very smooth the last 8 or 9 years because it's only single or double year ice. But it's very difficult. You know, we have our sleds can weigh up to 220 pounds to 300 pounds. So trying to pull these sleds up over are very difficult. But we also work together as a team, and I also make all my clients raise money for charity, and I've raised over $14.2 million in charities of their choice. So that's something I'm really proud of. It's not so much about my own trip, it's more about how we can always help out mankind. But there's all kinds of little lily pads. You're jumping from one to the other. I designed the sleds. We're able to get across with the sleds float. They're very strong. We also put on dry suits. In the dry suits, we can swim across and actually pull the sled across with us. So if there's a big open water lead, we'll just jump in the water. But I'm going to reverse and go to the South Pole. It's been really interesting. My first polar trip was, I was asked to guide a blind gentleman and a deaf gentleman. And I had never done a polar trip like this before. So I needed to learn not only how I was going to adapt for Miles, the British gentleman who's blind, but also how I was going to deal with my own way of introspective thought and how I was going to get him there. So it was very interesting for me. It took us 62 days, 787 miles, wearing the same underwear. We were finally successful to get to the South Pole. I just want to share, this guy is one of my heroes. His name is Ernest Shackleton. He was a turn-of-the-century explorer. In 1909, he got within 97 miles of the South Pole. He had the ability to say, I don't have enough food, I don't have enough fuel, I need to go back and remount another expedition and come back. They would take 4 years to get their expeditions together. So in 1914 through 1916, he put together the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. And he was going to come into the Roni Ice Shelf. There's a lot of permanent sea ice there. And he was going to winter out, and he was going to cross all the way to the South Pole and then all the way down to the Ross Sea. Unfortunately, his boat got crushed, and I don't know if anybody's ever read the book Endurance, but I strongly recommend it. Alfred Lansing's the author, and it's just an amazing story of survival. The reason I'm telling you about this, he's not only my hero, I wanted to go in and recreate the journey that he intended to do of 1914 and 1916. So I got dropped off at Berkner Island, but I didn't take a boat, and it didn't take me 4 years. I went in by aircraft, an Aleutian aircraft, and got dropped off on an ice runway. Then I took a ski-equipped plane and got dropped off on Berkner Island, and me and another gentleman started our journey, 737 miles. And if you look at this picture, you think there's mountains behind me, but those aren't mountains, those are crevasses, and they're about 60 or 70 feet high. I encountered 4 different crevasses where I fell completely through to my chest and had to extract myself to continue on. But it was an amazing journey. We were able to get through the Recovery Glacier and up on the Polar Plateau. The Polar Plateau sits at 9,300 feet. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of whiteout conditions. I'm able to navigate through that with my compass. And so just continue. I do have technology. I'm able to update my Facebook and Twitter and my website through my iPhone and my Iridium satellite phone, and able to continue that way. Also, even me, who has more experience than anybody on the planet, I even make mistakes. I took my goggles off for about 2 hours one day and became snowblind. I basically burned my retina. 3 days prior to that, I chewed on a little tiny piece of chocolate and broke a tooth and had to pull one of my molars out with a needle-nose plier. So in this picture, I have some gauze stuffed in where my tooth was. I have a patch over my eye, but the show must go on. 3 days later, we arrived at the pole. 47 days, 737 miles, and we raised money. You guys probably have heard of the South Beach diet. Well, this is the South Pole diet. I weighed about 217 pounds at the beginning, and then when I arrived at the pole, I weighed 174. So I had to shave my head. I didn't have a comb with me. I had missing a tooth. That was probably a couple ounces. But I ran into this guy about 3 years ago, and his name is Grant Corrigan and Shauna. And he was involved in a snowmobile accident in the Sonora Mountains of California. He went off a big jump, and he ended up landing and breaking his L6 and L7 in his back. The doctors said he would never walk again. Shauna married him 2 months prior to that accident, and she stood by him when he couldn't walk for himself. He came to me, he said, I'd like to go to the South Pole. So we put together a South Pole trip where he would be pushing in a sit ski, about 76 miles. Amazing to watch someone go through this, to be able to push themselves across the Arctic and Antarctic polar plateau. He started walking through the original 12 Antarctic Treaty countries, the flags. He was crying to me. He said, "I wish my wife was here to see this moment," and we had secretly flew her in. We made a movie about it called The Push. Morgan Freeman's narrating it. It should be out in the spring, so look for it in your local theater. But it was an amazing story of survival. This year, I've been lucky enough to meet Aaron Anderson, who's actually from Sweden, and he will be going with me from the coast of Antarctica to the geographic South Pole in November this year. So I'm looking forward to that. 2 years ago, I did 2 expeditions in one. I drove all the way across Antarctica and then down to a drop-off with a 19-year-old boy named Parker Liato. And Parker, I did one trip prior to that at the North Pole with, but he wanted to really do this trip from the coast and work on some climate change stuff, which I'm really proud of. We drove across in this 6x6 vehicle, an Icelandic vehicle, and that was over 1,000 miles. We dug snow pits along the way, did ice depth measurements. We also did core samples as well to try to give the scientists some information. We were taking isotope readings as well. But the show must go on. We ended up skiing. And the previous record for the 437-mile was 24 days. We ended up arriving at the pole in 18 days, 4 hours, and 43 minutes. So awesome on Parker. And I just want to thank you guys. What an amazing day, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. And I want to thank you guys very much, and Randy Artic for inviting me. But the one last message that I wanted to leave with you guys is it's really not about trying to get to the pole. We can always do so much more in our life. Just need to think about goals and to help out people, whether it's handicapped people, well, it's philanthropic work where we're raising money for charity, or we're doing science work. So thank you very much.